After divorce, there's a specific kind of quiet that settles into a house. Not the restful kind. It's the quiet where you notice the dishwasher beep echo a second too long, because there's no longer anyone in the next room to half hear it with you. Maybe you've stood in that quiet. Maybe you're standing in it right now, phone in hand, the closet behind you only half full, wondering why nobody warned you that the hardest part of a divorce isn't the paperwork. It's the laundry. It's the way one missing toothbrush can undo you at 7 a.m. Here's the thing nobody puts on the legal forms. On paper, a divorce is a single document, a signature, a settlement, a date stamped by a court. But what you are actually living through is one of the most profound griefs a human being can experience, and almost no one prepares you for it. Divorce grief is real grief. You're grieving a person who is still alive. You're mourning a future that already had your name on it. And whether your marriage lasted 2 years or 25, what's happening inside you has a shape, a real, studied, documented shape. The chaos you feel is not you falling apart. It's you moving through something human beings have always moved through. So let's walk through it. Not to fix you. There's nothing to fix. Just so that the next time the quiet gets loud, you know which room of the house you're standing in. Start with the part nobody photographs. The numbness. In the first days, a lot of women describe feeling strangely fine, functional, making the school lunches, answering the work emails, telling friends, "Honestly, I'm okay," and then crumpling in the car outside the supermarket because a song came on. Psychologists who study how people cope with loss describe grief as something we take in doses, confronting it, then stepping back, then confronting it again, because the full weight all at once would be more than anyone's system could carry. The numbness is not weakness, it's mercy. And here's something the sad movies get wrong. Feeling oddly okay does not mean you're secretly broken underneath, sitting on a breakdown that's bound to detonate later. For a great many people, calm is not denial. It's resilience, doing its quiet work in real time. The part worth watching is not the early numbness. It's numbness that never lifts, that's still there months down the line, flattening everything. When grief stops moving and starts hardening, when the darkness becomes a permanent address rather than a weather pattern, that crosses into what clinicians now recognize as prolonged grief disorder, a condition formally added to the DSM-5. That's the kind worth taking to someone trained to help. Now, the part most divorce content gets badly wrong. You've heard of the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. A psychiatrist named Elisabeth Kübler-Ross described them in 1969 in a book called On Death and Dying. But here's what almost everyone forgets. She wasn't studying heartbreak or divorce or grief at all. She was sitting with people who were dying, listening to how they faced their own deaths. Her colleague, Colin Murray Parkes, built on this work in the years that followed, and together, their frameworks shaped how the world thought about loss. Before that work escaped into popular culture and hardened into a staircase. 5 neat steps you climb in order and finish. That staircase doesn't exist. Researchers have gone looking, and there's simply no good evidence that people move through grief in a fixed sequence and come out the other side on schedule. Even Kübler-Ross said, near the end of her life, that the stages were never meant to tuck messy human feelings into neat packages. The model that grief researchers now consider most accurate was developed by Margaret Stroebe and Henk Schut, and they called it the dual process model. What it describes isn't stages, it's oscillation. You move back and forth between confronting the loss and stepping away from it, between grief work and restoration work, sometimes within the same afternoon. So if you wake up at acceptance and you're back in anger by lunch, you are not doing this wrong. The stages aren't a cue. They're weather. They move through you, they double back, and the afternoon you decide you're finally done is often the afternoon the next front rolls in. Take the anger. Women are handed the worst possible instructions about it. You're supposed to be graceful, dignified, the bigger person. So the anger goes underground, and underground, it doesn't disappear. It just changes its name. It comes out as the third reorganized kitchen drawer this week. As the message you draft, delete, and draft again. As lying awake, composing the perfect, devastating thing you will never actually say. Anger in divorce isn't a character flaw. Anger is grief that found a door. The women who struggle longest are often the ones who are too well behaved to let any of it out. And underneath the anger, almost always, is the replay. The 3 a.m. forensic investigation where you take the whole marriage apart, hunting for the exact moment it broke. If I'd agreed to the counseling sooner, if I hadn't taken that job, if I'd been thinner, softer, quieter, louder. Notice what that replay is really doing. It's trying to hand you back control, because if it was something you did, then it's something you could have undone. A flaw is almost comforting next to the harder truth. That 2 people can try, and it can still end. And some things break for reasons no autopsy will ever name. I want to stop here for a second, because if you've been listening to all of this like it's a documentary about other women, I need you to hear this next part as yours. The numbness, the weather, the anger with no door. The 3 a.m. autopsy. None of it is a sign that you are broken. It is the exact, predictable, well-documented shape of a human being losing something that mattered. You are not behind. You are not too much. You are not the only one who cried in a parking lot this week. You're grieving, and there is no correct order to do it in. There's a researcher named Pauline Boss who gave a piece of this its truest name. She spent her career at the University of Minnesota studying families living with loss that has no ending, and she called it ambiguous loss. Grief with no body, no funeral, no neighbor at the door with a casserole. When someone dies, the world rearranges itself around you. People show up. They know, more or less, what to say. But when a marriage ends, your loss is everywhere and nowhere at once. He's at the kids' game. He's tagged in a photo. He still exists, just not for you. Boss found that this open-ended kind of loss is one of the most punishing there is, precisely because the door never fully shuts. And there's a second, quieter wound layered on top. A grief expert named Kenneth Doka named it disenfranchised grief, the kind that isn't openly acknowledged or socially mourned. People bring meals to a widow. They don't always know what to do with a woman whose marriage ended, especially if it was her choice, or if it dragged out, or if everyone liked him. So you grieve hard, and you grieve mostly alone, in a world that quietly expects you to be over it already. Divorce recovery doesn't come with a timetable, and if your grief has felt messier and lonelier than it should, that's not because you loved less. It's because nobody handed you an ending, and nobody handed you permission. Then there's the part that surprises women most. It isn't missing him. It's missing her, the version of you that lived inside the marriage. And to understand why that loss cuts so deep, it helps to know something about how we attach. The psychologist John Bowlby spent his career developing attachment theory. The idea that humans are wired, from infancy onward, to form deep bonds with specific others, and that losing those bonds triggers a fundamental biological alarm. Divorce doesn't just hurt emotionally. It disrupts something in the nervous system. It's supposed to. 3 psychologists, Erica Slaughter, Wendy Gardner and Eli Finkel ran a study with a title that says it all: Who Am I Without You? What they found is that when a relationship ends, people don't just feel sad, their actual sense of who they are goes blurry. They called it a loss of self-concept clarity, and that blurriness, more than the sadness itself, is what predicts how hard you struggle. For years, you were a we. Your weekends, maybe your last name, your side of the bed, the stories that started with "we always." When that scaffolding comes down, a lot of women find they're not entirely sure who's left standing there. It can feel less like losing a person and more like losing a country. Passport, language, map, all expired overnight. And almost never is it only about you. If there are children in this, whether they're 7 or 37, the ground shifts under them too. We tend to picture divorce as a young family's story, but one of the biggest changes in recent decades is the rise of what researchers call gray divorce. Sociologists Susan Brown and I-Fen Lin found that the divorce rate for adults over 50 roughly doubled between 1990 and 2010, which means a whole generation of grown children are quietly absorbing their parents' separation. Discovering that being an adult doesn't make you immune to the floor moving, that you can be 40 years old and still feel like a kid watching home come apart. For the women with younger children, the research offers something that is both sobering and freeing. Decades of studies, led by sociologist Paul Amato, keep landing on the same conclusion. It is rarely the divorce itself that does the lasting damage to children. It's the conflict. The kids caught in the crossfire, the loaded handovers, the bad-mouthing, the war waged by text message, are the ones who struggle most. The kids whose parents manage even a cool, business-like co-parenting piece tend to come through okay. And if the conflict between you is serious enough that court is inevitable, it's worth knowing that divorce mediation exists precisely to keep children out of the middle. Structured, lower conflict resolution that research consistently links to better outcomes for families. That is a brutal thing to hear when you are furious, and you have every right to be furious. But it's also a strange kind of mercy, because the one thing that matters most for them is one of the few things still partly in your hands. Here's the part the sad songs leave out entirely. A psychologist at Columbia named George Bonanno has spent decades studying what actually happens to people after the worst losses of their lives. And in study after study, the most common outcome is not collapse, it's resilience. Not because those people were special or stronger or found the right meditation, but because the human ability to rebuild a life is simply larger than the human ability to picture rebuilding it. Healing after divorce doesn't look the way the movies say it does. It isn't a montage, and it doesn't arrive on a schedule. But Bonanno's research is clear. Most people find their way through. You cannot, from inside the quiet house, see the woman you'll be on the other side of this. That isn't a failure of hope. She just doesn't exist yet. You're building her right now, in the dark, with no blueprint, which is the only way anyone has ever built her. That quiet I started with, the dishwasher beep, the half-empty closet, the toothbrush that wrecked you at 7 in the morning, it does not stay the same quiet forever. One day, and you won't be able to point to the day, you'll notice the house is quiet, and it won't feel like something missing. It'll feel like room. The same silence that once sounded like the end will sound, very faintly at first, like the beginning of a place that is finally, completely yours. You are not what broke you. You're the one still standing in the quiet, becoming the woman who gets to fill it.